Also, these rain bands have some lightning.
If you have been ordered to evacuate, you need to leave now. This is your last chance to make a good...
Good evening, everyone. I'm Ali Velshi.
And I'm Stephanie Rule. It is 10 p.m. on the East Coast. Thank you for being here for our special coverage of Hurricane Irma, which is already on parts of Florida this evening. Just moments ago, the National Hurricane Center reported wind gusts nearly hurricane force occurring in the Florida Keys. Irma is due to make a direct hit on the Keys tomorrow early morning, possibly strengthening from a Category 3 to a Category 4 storm.
Heavy squalls of rain with tornadoes embedded in them are already sweeping across southern Florida. This video just in, you're looking at it, appears to be a twister. Look at that. In the town of Coral Ridge, more people are losing power. Florida power officials are now reporting more than 110,000 outages, mostly in Miami-Dade and Broward County. Broward County is just north of Miami-Dade. So for that part of Florida, which is likely not getting the worst of this, it is still power outages, heavy winds, and rain is coming. Now let's bring in NBC meteorologist Bill Cairns. Bill, what have we got?
We're 1 hour away from the next update from the National Hurricane Center. We'll get a new intensity update at 11 p.m. East Coast time, and we'll get the new forecast path. Everything that I've been seeing, I don't expect any changes in the path whatsoever. It looks like we're pretty locked in on the west coast of Florida. We'll wait and see what they do with the intensity, if they play with it at all. I want to go all the way over here because I want to show you this imagery behind you guys, Stephanie and Ali. On the wall over here, Joe. This is the zoomed-in view of the radar that we get out of Key West. We have a really good view now of the eye. And what has happened finally, it took forever, it's finally now making that northwards move. This is what we've been waiting for. It's now moving to the west-northwest or north-northwest, away from the coastline of Cuba after being near Cuba for about 24 hours. This bright red, that is where the really intense hurricane force winds work. The center is not very organized right now. It doesn't have a very well-defined eye. It kind of has an eye, two eyes here. We call it an outer eye, and then we have an inner one. You can kind of see at the very last frame right here, that's some of what's left of the inner eye. And this bigger one on the outside looks like it's trying to take over. And if it can consolidate itself, and if this can actually clear the inner one out, then we can have a larger eye, and then it could intensify. So that's what we're kind of waiting to see what happens. There's something called eye wall destruction as well. Is that a possibility? An eye wall replacement cycle. Can this get when they're really better? Powerful, that's kind of a natural process. We don't understand all of it, but they have a natural process of getting rid of one eye, and then another one forms, that one shrinks, and then it will repeat itself. It was really kind of disorganized over the last 24 hours on the north coast of Cuba in the eye, but now it's back over the open water. You can actually see as soon as it gets over the open water in the last like 30 minutes, you see a lot more yellow and a lot more red. So it's already starting to feast on the warmer waters. You can see where Key West is located up there, and every one of the Keys, that bright yellow-red band about to hit them, that's going to be probably their first hurricane really force gust that they're about to get. So this is the close zoomed-in radar that we'll be watching as we go throughout the night as it closes in on the Keys. The other thing, of course, is the storm surge. That's something that there's nothing that's going to matter. At the end of the last hour, Stephanie, you were mentioning that about Sandy, how Sandy produced this really crazy storm surge for only a Category 1. And that's an important lesson. The category that you hear for the storms is only dependent on its wind speed. Has nothing to do with how large or how small the storm is. And how the size of the storm is really what is dependent on how much water it can push and what determines the storm surge.
So how does that work? Like, walk us through how a storm surge works.
I give you this example when I go give the talks at elementary schools. I tell people if you want to see kind of how a storm surge works, get like a shallow baking pan, fill it with water. And you can do this with your kids to kind of show them how it works. And then go and put water in it with a kind of black marker or something, mark each side. Then go take a fan and put it at one end and blow it on high and see how much the water rises at the other end of the pan. And it's literally the same equivalent of what the hurricane is doing. It's pushing the water in a certain direction. And in this case, unfortunately, it's pushing all of that water up into the Keys with that storm surge that they're starting to really see and get now, and then you get the 10 to 15 foot. Now, storm surge is also dependent on the terrain under the ocean. Along the Gulf, the water is very shallow. So when we get the water piling in, it's almost like a tsunami effect because, the tsunami wave gets bigger as it gets towards the coast because the water shelf is getting more shallow. It's almost the same thing. Though it's the shallower the shelf, the water gets higher and higher. Some areas are very prone to storm surges, and this is one of them. This is one of them. In a Big Bend, very prone to it too.
Well, I'm in Miami. We left the beach area, and now we're in downtown. First of all, Hallie, can I just say how much I love Bill Cairns? He makes it all so incredibly interesting to watch. When he starts getting into it, you can just tell he understands everything, and he just wants people to hear what he's got to say and understand it. I love his explanations. It's just great TV for me.
We need his explanations.
We do. We totally do. And I think people get it when they hear it like that. All right, so we're in downtown Miami right now, and you can tell that it's dry. We've had a lot of those rain bands moving in from the beach, but we kind of shifted to a drier location. And remember, the beach areas wanted to put everyone on lockdown and get everybody out of the street. So we wanted to do the same thing just to encourage people to go back into their homes and make sure they stay there. We're still in this point to where everything we've seen so far is basically nothing compared to what we'll see tomorrow. And I think, you know, the forecast is giving you that idea, but I really want to drive that idea home to people. Not even on the East Coast, certainly not on the West Coast, and really, we're going to get worse in the Keys. If you guys have got the wind gust maps in order, I'd love to show you that. I'd love to kind of go over what we expect to happen and give you some miles per hour. Bill, do they have those?
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, he says go ahead. You got them.
Okay, good. So let's just start with like about an hour from now. When we think, and he showed you that orange hurricane field, we're going to shift the colors around a little bit, and the wind gusts in this will be like a bright white color. So about an hour from now, we'll see those wind gusts kind of pick up to that 90-mile-per-hour mark in the Keys, about 84 miles per hour in Key Largo. You'll start to get those colors, you know, the bright colors of wind get into those areas. Now, shift it up to where we think about 8 a.m. by the time we get on to Sunday, or move that in, and I'll take 1 p.m. on Sunday, and we'll work off these that are there. Now, notice those maps. You see that white area? That's where the heavier wind is. Even though that eye is beginning to pass a little bit here, we've got a good, strong wind still in the southern part of the state. Now, look all the way over on the East Coast. Look at Miami. That eye is beginning to pass a little bit here. We've got a good, strong wind still in the southern part of the state. Now, look all the way over on the East Coast. Look at Miami at 77 miles an hour. Then look over there at the West Coast, Marco Island, out of the cone. Fort Lauderdale or West Palm Beach is out of the cone. You're out of the eye, you're not out of the storm. This is a huge storm. You're definitely getting hurricane force winds. You need to stay put tomorrow. Then look, by the time we move it up to 4 o'clock on Sunday, check out Fort Myers. Now, boom, that wind speeds up. Look at Marco Island. Look how Marco Island there in the eye area, it gets almost dead calm for a moment. And then look north of that, where that big wind field is kind of spreading out a little bit, all the way over to the East Coast. West Palm Beach is almost as high as Fort Myers is on the wind scale. So I want you guys. Now, one of the things, and Bill, you know, guys, everybody jump in on this conversation, because when an eye moves onshore like this, there's a couple things I want you to notice about that. We needed to get on land before it gets to Tampa Bay, because, and this isn't exactly my perfect scenario. I don't want it in the water passing Tampa, because that puts the strongest winds and that surge driving into the bay. And that's exactly what we don't want to see. So we need to get this eye on even before the forecast models show that it's on land there. I still would like to get it on land before then. So yes, it'll get hit by the hurricane. Yes, it'll get some flooding and some surge, and it'll get the wind as well. But I don't want it to get that right front quadrant. The other thing I want you to notice is how now, look at all this splitting up. Look at how the colors are not in one tight area anymore. They're spread all over the place. Those winds are going to spread. So Fort Pierce at 53 miles per hour, Orlando at 62 miles per hour, and then look at Sebring right in the center of the state at about 77. So the winds, yeah, it's wild, isn't it? And the winds are going to be a problem for everyone. That's going to continue as it drives all the way up to the top of Florida into Georgia as well. And so will the rains. Just to give you an idea that all the way into Georgia, you're going to see Cat 1 wind field and very heavy rain into Georgia and into Tennessee by the time we get into the middle of the week.
Sam, for us, you know, mere mortals who Cat 1, Cat 2, these are new terms for us. Give us a Sam Champion weather history in terms of when was the last time you had concerns like this?
I got to tell you, you know, stood there in Sandy watching everything go down and was very, very, very concerned. We were standing on Battery Park and was very concerned about what was going to happen to the New York area in that storm. I'm actually more concerned about the kind of destructive water and wind that this storm will carry. As Sandy was breaking apart, this one is so well organized. I don't know. I'd be interested to see what someone else felt too. I'm not great on comparisons, but I got to tell you, this is to me has me more concerned.
I'll jump in, Sam. I'll say storm surge.
Yeah.
Storm surge wise, this is Katrina-esque. And I'm not talking about the New Orleans flooding when the levees broke. I'm talking about what happened in Biloxi, what happened in Gulfport, Mississippi, that area. That is what this kind of reminds me of. I mean, we had a little bit of
those water casinos and moved them onto the shore and took them out of the water and put them across the road. I know exactly what you're talking about.
Sam, stay with us. Let's bring Chris Hayes back into the conversation. He's in Naples, Florida tonight. Chris, just moments ago, we were talking about Hurricane Sandy, and I know that's something you followed when it happened and after. There you are in Naples, where it is raining. It's not raining in Miami, but it seems that the weather view has shifted even in the last hour.
Yeah, these rain bands keep coming through. It's weird because every time they come through, you think, oh, okay, well, now the storm's starting. But as Sam was explaining and as Bill was showing on that radar, it's these very, very narrow bands, and they're moving across us in such a way that you get very intense bits of wind and rain, and then they pass. Those are going to increase in frequency and in strength as well as time goes on.
Chris, as Sam just mentioned, I think the nation learned a lesson in that the winds kept on dropping and dropping and dropping, and everybody says this isn't going to be serious, and then we understood storm surge. So what's happened in this storm, because you were on the Atlantic coast of Florida, I think earlier today. Now you're on the Gulf Coast, and the threat around Naples now is for storm surge. People take that seriously in a different way, perhaps less seriously.
Yeah, and it is the most deadly part of almost any storm, almost always. Sandy was a great example. You know, Sandy wasn't even a hurricane at landfall, and it did an incredible amount of damage. Most of that damage was through the storm surge, and most people just simply weren't prepared for it. I mean, part of the reason that it was so destructive is it happened to hit at high tide, which, again, Bill was talking about tide in these parts around 3 p.m. tomorrow, which is right when we're going to see the strongest part of that storm in the latest tracking, so that's a problem. But that hit Sandy at high tide, and the so massive, it swamped over Lower Manhattan, it swamped over Staten Island. And the other thing to remember is salt water is uniquely damaging. I mean, salt water really destroys things. The New York City subway system is basically still getting out from under what happened there because of how destructive and corrosive salt water is. You're going to have huge salt water pouring over all of Gulf coastal Florida from here all the way to Fort Myers, and that's going to be an astounding amount of property damage.
But one of the risks, Chris, in Florida is so many people didn't evacuate, especially in the Keys. They said, we're Floridians, we've lived through this. You know, when Hurricane Sandy had been prepared, but we were so scared, so many of us took those warnings seriously. Where you are in Naples, does it seem like there's anyone around?
Well, here's what I'll say. Having been in Fort Myers this morning and in Naples tonight, you know, there's a lot of retirees in Florida, and there's always with pets. And there's a lot of folks who are on fixed incomes. And there are a lot of folks who have family members who live in Chicago or who live in Tucson or who live in Boston and are here by themselves. And it's not always the easiest thing. I mean, to give you a sense of the demand that's in Naples and in Lee County, which is just north of here. In Lee County, there's a Germain Arena, which right now has 4,900 people. It's closed. No more people can go in. There are people sleeping overnight to get into that shelter. All the Naples Center, all the shelters in Naples proper, as far as I can tell, according to the latest reports, are filled. They were asking folks to actually shelter in homes or bring people into their homes if they felt they were strong enough. So I just want to be clear that, by and large, I think the supply of shelter is not big enough for the demand. I mean, people are trying to get to safe ground, and a lot of it is timing. I mean, look, we were making, I got to say, first person, we were making this calculation today, right? And you talked to someone earlier talking about you know, the time kind of got away from them to evacuate. We were making this calculation where you feel like the window's closing. What you don't want to be is stuck on the road with no gas. There is, I can tell you firsthand, there is no gas for 75 miles up the coast of coastal Florida. So if you aren't 100% sure of a place you can go, if you're a senior, you're getting in a car, you've got half a tank of gas, have anywhere you can get gas. That's as terrifying an eventuality and a possibility, perhaps, as staying in your bathtub with your mattress over you. And I think that's really when you're talking about those stragglers. There's some people who think to themselves, hey, it's going to be fine. I've talked to those folks. Believe me, they exist. But I think more people, particularly in this part of Florida, that's been the case.
Well, Chris, show us. I mean, it's raining pretty consistently behind you. I mean, even in the last minute that we're speaking to you, it seems like the rain is coming down harder. Where are you exactly?
All right, so we're in Naples. So behind me, 4 miles that way, is the Gulf Coast. That is the part that's right now going to get the sort of fullest brunt of that storm. The eye is going to hit that Gulf Coast. That's where you're going to see, according to everything we've seen from the National Weather Service maps that Sam and Bill were talking about, we're going to see the highest storm surge there, particularly if it comes at that 2-3 p.m. at high tide. The storm surge maps show a surge flooding in several miles. We're on a little bit of higher ground. Obviously, we're in a structure right now on the 6th floor, so we're pretty high up. But there's a whole part of coastal Naples, and obviously this is the coast, right? That's the part that's built up the most. That's the part that has some of the most valuable property. That's where all the sort of biggest, sort of the tourist industry here are. So all of that part is in the highest level of storm surge zone. You can see that rain band right now. You can see how quickly that comes in. That this is what we've sort of been going through since we got here, this sort of rapidly accelerating rain, and then it will ebb just as suddenly.
It doesn't seem too windy, though.
No, we're okay right here. We're a little. One of the things right now is, and I was talking to a scientist yesterday as we were going through these storm surge maps. The particular wind are coming at you from what for direction actually end up mattering a lot, whether you're on the clean or dirty side. Sam was talking about that in terms of where that storm hits Tampa and how that counterclockwise motion is pushing, whether it's pushing up into the bay at that moment. So right now we happen to be in a situation where the wind is actually coming towards us this way because the bands are coming from that direction, right? The cycle is going like this. The bands are coming that direction. It's shielding us largely from the wind right now.
All right, Chris Hayes joining us from Naples, Florida. Chris, stay safe.
I'm going to ask our director to put that picture up of
Fort Myers.
Fort Myers, because the wind looks a little more obvious there, if he can. If I can just ask our director to put that shot up. There you go. See, there you see it. That's a live picture of Fort Myers, and where you see those palm trees moving around. So there is some wind, but remember, in addition to the storm surge, that rain, when you get that storm surge and you get that degree of rain, you then have drainage issues. So that could just contribute to normal flooding, and the sea level rises as we get closer and closer to the storm. So low-lying areas will flood.
And just think about those vulnerable places. If you've ever been there, Sanibel Island, Captiva, those narrow, small islands, very even hard to get to, how vulnerable they are at a time like this. And the winds, they're only starting to pick up. What it's going to look like over the next 24 hours, extraordinary. Joining us now is WBBH reporter Trent Kelly. He's in Fort Myers right now. Trent, we're just looking at images from Fort Myers. It really seems like just in the last 5 or 10 minutes, the wind's really picking up.
Yeah, that's right, Allie and Steph. In fact, we've been out here. We're not in Fort Myers tonight. We're in the city just to the west of it, the city of Cape Coral. That is the largest city on the southwest Florida coastline, situated right next to the city of Fort Myers. We've been out here pretty much all day today since 2 o'clock this afternoon. And you're right, in just the past, I'd say about 10, 15 minutes, we've noticed a significant increase in the winds out here, not to mention now a steady rain is falling. The winds not so much picking up out here. Earlier, this tree was really swaying in the winds. Those gusts have calmed down a bit, but as you can see, the rain also starting to pick up tonight. As I told you guys, we are here in the city of Cape Coral. This is the largest city here in southwest Florida, and if your viewers have ever visited Cape Coral, then they know that one of the things that makes this city unique is its extensive network of canals. Basically, a lot of homes that are further inland, they have access to the Gulf through this extensive network of canals. Now, it's great if you want to come live here. If you're looking to buy a home here, it allows you easy access to the Gulf of Mexico, but it's not great when you're talking about a major hurricane potentially slamming into this area, reason being storm surge. I heard Bill Cairns earlier explaining how storm surge works. That is a huge concern here. Because of those canals, you're going to have a lot of areas that are a little bit further inland that normally wouldn't see this storm surge. Now they're going to see it because those canal levels are going to rise. You're going to have many neighborhoods out here which are going to see at least a couple of feet of standing water. I'm actually coming to you live from a neighborhood that was under a mandatory evacuation order earlier today. We had firefighters going around the neighborhood, first responders alerting residents that, hey, if you decide to stay here, you are doing so at your own risk. I want to come show you this home you see behind me. You can see the windows here up. I spoke to the family living here a short time ago. They were out here about 2 hours ago putting up these boards, trying to make some last-minute preparations to their home. In fact, if you look over here, you can see they are now parking their car in front of their garage door. They are doing everything they can to shore up, as we are now just a couple of hours away from really starting to feel the impacts of Irma. This family, by the way, they're not listening to that mandatory evacuation order. They're going to hunker down inside that home. They've got 3 young grandkids staying with them tonight. They're not leaving. They're not going to leave this area. They're going to hunker down.
For the last 2 hours about the risk of storm surge and what it does, even a few inches or feet. How far inland is that home you're standing in front of?
It's at least several miles inland. We're not talking about a neighborhood that's right on the shore. This is several miles inland, and it's because of those canals.
It's going to flood. It's all going to flood.
Going to primarily see a lot of that street flooding here.
Right, it's going to flood.
By that.
It's going to flood twice
because a major concern.
It's going to flood twice because it's going to flood once because before a hurricane, the water levels rise anyway, and then as that storm surge comes in, it's going to double flood. So I want one last question for you, Trent. What's a gas situation in there? Because I got a tweet from somebody in Pinellas, which is far north of you, closer to Tampa, that says we don't have gas in stations around here, so evacuation would be dangerous because if you try and evacuate and you run out of gas and you're in one of these roads, that's a problem. You guys got gas in Fort Myers?
No, gas is extremely hard to find right now. There's a couple of stations around town that in the days leading up to this, you might get lucky. You might catch them when they're open and be able to fill up your tank. But in cruising around town today, I got to tell you, about 95%, 97% of all the gas stations here in town, they are closed, they are out of gas, and it's one reason some people now just, it's too late. They've just got to stay here and hunker down in their homes and hope that the damage isn't as bad as many people are fearing.
All right, Trent. All right, Trent Kelly in Fort Myers, Florida. Thank you. You know, again, it makes me think of Mayor Philip Levine, how important it was that they offered free buses and trolley service out. We can tell you to evacuate, but if there's no gas in your car, there's nowhere you're going to get to.
So one of the things that a number of people have asked for is why did they not do contraflow, where all the roads go one direction, at least the highways? First of all, we've managed to get most people.
What does that mean?
Contraflow is when you change the southbound and the northbound lanes to go northbound in this case, so that you can get out of Florida. One of the reasons is there's only one pipeline that goes into Florida for gasoline. It's a spur of the Colonial Pipeline, the same place we get our gas from up north. The rest of the gas has to come in by ship or by truck. So they have sent trucks in under police escort southbound to try and position gasoline. Most gas stations in southern Florida have, and western Florida, have generators, but it doesn't matter if you have a generator if you don't actually have gas. So they're trying to position gas. It hasn't actually worked. This is West Palm Beach we're looking at.
I also want to point out Maya Rodriguez, my goodness, she was talking earlier about when the winds are lower than 35 miles an hour, Florida Power and Light sends their teams out. You have to show some appreciation or a shout out to those teams working in the field, trying to keep power working, running in Florida. We also have to mention, just think about this, Hurricane Harvey ravished Texas just a week ago. Less than a week ago, Mexico was hit by an earthquake, an 8.2 on the Richter scale. And as we await for Irma to hit Florida, the last few days, it has brutalized much of the Caribbean.
Their place is entirely destroyed. Let's go to Jacob Soboroff. He's standing by in Collier County, Florida, which is just outside of Naples. And as you can tell, a number of people have been asking. We had a lot of reporters in southeastern Florida. We are repositioning them one by one to the Gulf Coast of Florida. Jacob is one of those reporters. Jacob, the rain's coming down where you are now.
Yeah, it's starting to come down. It's not particularly windy. I heard you talking to Chris just a few minutes ago. We're not too far away from where Chris Hayes is, but we have been all over the Gulf Coast of Florida today, at least in this general vicinity. We crossed Florida on the I-75, and we ended up over here. We went to the Fort Myers Beach area. We were in the name escapes me at the moment. It'll come to me. It's been a long day, guys, but we're doing a ride along with the fire department, an incredible fire department. These are the people that are going to save people in the event of something terrible happening. And I want to introduce you to a whole new group of people here at the Greater Naples Fire Rescue Team. Come on inside, guys, because it's a lot better than standing on the rain, quite frankly. It's not as terrible as it's going to be here yet, but these are the guys where Steph, Allie, when it starts coming down, these are the gentlemen, the men and women of this department that are going to be saving the day. And I want to introduce you to the Chief. Chief, nice to meet you. Good to have you here. Guys, talk to me, Chief, about what we're looking at right now, all of this equipment, and how you're going to be putting it to use ultimately when it really starts to come down here, because what we're seeing right now is nothing.
Right. Well, you know, we're expecting the bottom to drop out in this thing in the next 12 hours or so, and it won't be me, it'll be these fellows here that'll be doing that. We've got 15 fire stations throughout the county, and we've got about 28 pieces of apparatus ready to go, and we have many different configurations. This is just one of our operations that will handle some of the responses.
And my understanding is you're part of the Emergency Services Unit. I don't know if that's exactly what you guys call it here.
Yeah, the USAR team, Urban Search and Rescue.
Can we go take a look at that real quick?
Yeah.
Come on over here. Steph, Allie, check this out. So this is, it says Greater Naples Fire Rescue Special Operations. This is one of the vehicles with which you're going to be responding once people call you after the hurricane comes through. Right. What's on this? What's on board here, and why are you guys going to be using this equipment?
Well, pretty much what happens with this truck is we'll go out and survey with some of our smaller vehicles in the event of a collapse, confined space, something like that. We have the equipment on here to go ahead and shore up a collapsed building, you know, to access a victim that's stuck in a small confined space area. So we just have a lot more in-depth equipment on this truck to do that.
And there's some stuff over here, Chief. I wanted to show everybody this truck over here that you were showing me earlier. You were telling me that this is going to come in. This is usually used for a brush fire, but you're expecting to put this to use in the floods. Tell me why.
Yeah, well, we have 5 of these heavy military surplus apparatus, and if you know, we had some pretty significant wildfires these past few months here, and these were the same trucks that are on the national news. And the advantage of this is we can put 2 firefighters on board, and we have very minimal firefighting capability, but the bottom line is we have high ground clearance, so we can go in some pretty significant water with these vehicles.
So we're talking about, in your jurisdiction, about what, 300,000 people?
We've got about 75 full-time residents.
Okay, but in the greater area, there's about double that?
Yeah, in the county, right around 300,000.
How many people ultimately had to get out, and how many people are left over?
You know, it's an interesting point, because that is so hard to tell right now. You know, if you look at some of the numbers that are out there in Florida, they're saying 3 million people have left. There are thousands that have left, but you know, we're still getting a lot of phone calls about people that stayed back and they need welfare checks and how can we help them. So to be honest with you, I can't tell you how many people are still out there.
One of the things, guys, that I found really interesting that the Chief was telling me earlier is that many of the members of your department's families have had to shack up here.
Yeah, that's true. We do a shelter of last resort, and we've got about 25 family members that we take care of. We bring them in, and we try to give them a place of refuge if they have nowhere else to go. And of course, you saw that. We even bring in some of the pets and put them over here in some of the back rooms.
So between now and when the storm, and it looks like it's really starting to come down actually a little bit now, but we know that it's really not going to hit with its full force until tomorrow. Between now and then, what are you all going to be doing? You're just going to be waiting it out?
Well, you know, if you ask these guys, they're going to be doing a lot of eating, a lot of sleeping, and a lot of resting. and you know, they're very good at that, and they need to make some great meals, and they're going to bunk down. We're still going to regular routine calls, so if we get a call for service,
so you guys are still going out, because there's a lot of talk. There was a lot of talk, and let's go. I want to actually go over and talk to the guys. There was a lot of talk when I was in Miami Beach, that the department wasn't going to be going out over 45-mile-an-hour winds, 40-mile-an-hour winds.
Yeah, our rule of thumb is at about 45 mile an hour, we start to question that. But at the top end of that, at 60, we're really shutting the doors down. It depends on the severity of the call, type of situation. So we expect to run our calls as our folks over in the operations center kind of triage that.
And I want to get all you guys in here, because you guys are the guys that are going to be responding. But ultimately, tell me, have you ever seen anything like this before? You ever responded to an event like Irma?
Yeah, back when Andrew, I was working.
So you were here for Andrew?
I was here for Andrew.
What'd you learn from Andrew, and how you going to come around?
Just got to be more diligent and careful where we drive, and just not find ourselves in situations where we can't help other people. So take things slow and just try to be more efficient yet effective.
You seem remarkably cool about all of this. I frankly, I mean, it's a terrifying thing. Something that scares you?
No, I think we're up to the challenge. It's going to be devastating for the area. We know that. Our thoughts are definitely with the citizens.
All right, there you have it. I mean, and that is professionalism at its best. Steph, Allie, the members of this department are going to be on call. I know their citizens are going to be relying on them, and we'll certainly be checking back with you guys. Good luck in the next 24, 48 hours. Send it back to you guys.
Jacob, those men are the professionals. We're just the mere civilians. Thank you all so much. And Jacob, thank you for all your great reporting all day long.
You know, when we were talking about Harvey, we were talking about the urban search and rescue teams. Many had gone from other parts of the country to these places because they're equipped in that fashion to be able to deal with things in urban environments, people stuck in their homes, getting them out, and it was life-saving for people in Hurricane Harvey. So we're grateful that those folks are.
And we're already seeing responders from Harvey repositioned to prepare for Irma. Joining us now on the phone, Nicole Reed, who is riding out the hurricane in Miami with her boyfriend Steve Kellogg, another couple, and their cats. Nicole, talk to us. Why did you make this decision to stay?
It wasn't an easy decision, obviously, but I'm in a pretty secure house with a pretty new roof. There were a lot of people that were more of the coastal areas that were under mandatory evacuation orders that needed to get out. Gas was hard to come by. The gridlock was real. I mean, it was taking people 12 and 14 hours to get from Miami to Orlando, which normally is a 3.5, 4-hour trip. So it kind of made sense to stay put, stay secure, stay safe, and let the people that really needed to get out, get out.
Talk to us about the structure of your house and why you feel it's safe.
I recently put on a new roof about 6 months ago, and I'm fully shuttered up, and I think that my house is strong enough to go through whatever is coming at us.
And I was in a condo that was doing roof repairs during hurricane season, which doesn't seem to make the most sense, but we didn't have any shingles on our roofs. We had, you know, the roof paper and the tacks, but I didn't have any actual shingles. So I said, probably I shouldn't stay here until we know for sure what's coming. So that's why I decided to come here.
All right, you guys have a good understanding of the storm surge and the flooding you're likely to face?
Go ahead.
My home is up on a ridge in Coconut Grove, so the flooding is usually pretty minimal. Up against the coast, Nicole and I were we were up at a boat ramp today, and the docks are pretty much covered up, and a few had gone down, but up on this little ridge, we're safe from flooding.
Do you have an emergency plan? Because we've heard from city and state officials, you know, if you're in the Miami area now, stay home, but first responders can't get to you once the winds kick up. Do you have a plan if you need help?
I mean, absolutely. There are all kinds of, you know, concrete block buildings around here that are certainly secure if we need to get out and go, you know, somewhere that we can. There's a few buildings in the Grove that are 4, 5, 6 stories high that if we need to go up a couple more floors, if there is storm surge and flooding, we can do that. We have friends in the area that have stayed, and we're all kind of in touch with each other just to go where we need to go if we do need to evacuate to somewhere else.
Are those places walking distance to you? How are you going to get from where you live to one of these other safe buildings?
A lot of them are walking distance. Obviously, it might not be the safest idea to walk with some of these winds and wind gusts. But we also have, we have a truck here and ways to get in and out. There's, chainsaws if there's trees in the road, things like that. It happens from time to time when we have major storms here where there are trees that go down in the road and you've got to cut them up and get them out of the way.
And how long are you prepared to stay where you are for in case this thing does inundate the area and you have to stick around for a while?
I think as long as we need to. A lot of the neighbors and friends in the area have generators that we can, use if necessary, if we are out of power for extended period of time. And if that does happen, we're out of power for 3-4 weeks, like we have been in the past with some of these storms.
Wow.
Then at that point, we'll make the decision if we need to go to Orlando or Tampa or one of the other areas that may have some more power. Probably not Tampa at this point, but maybe on the East Coast.
You've lived through that before, 3-4 weeks without power?
I think back in 2005, we had a series of hurricanes that were sort of back-to-back, or 2004, around there. And yeah, the whole, South Florida area was without power for a few weeks. And Steve was actually here back in Andrew and was without power for quite some time.
All right, well, we'll keep our thoughts with you, Nicole and Steve.
Can I just ask one more question?
Yeah, sure.
How about your neighborhood? I mean, it's stunning to me. I would be so scared to stay. That's why I asked. You two are staying, your cats. I know one other couple. How about other people in your neighborhood? Are they staying too?
On my street, most of the neighbors have gone into Coral Gables and other houses a little further inland. But all I've heard is that they have no power, and we currently do.
And I don't know if you guys can hear. We're actually outside right now. Right now, it's not even raining. There's a little bit of wind, a little bit of gusts, but not much at all. So far, we've sort of been in a sweet spot where we're kind of between the outer bands that are coming through. So we're really not getting a whole lot of anything so far. Knock on wood.
Well, I hope you stay in that sweet spot.
All right.
Thanks.
Nicole and Steve, thanks very much. Let us go to Orlando now. Nigel Holderby is the national spokeswoman for the American Red Cross. Oh, Nigel, I'm sorry about mispronouncing your name. Thank you for joining us. Let's just talk a bit about the shelter situation. I believe you've got about 385 shelters open across Florida right now, with more expected to open tonight.
Absolutely. And the Red Cross really has mobilized thousands of trained Red Cross disaster relief workers, truckloads of supplies, and we're really getting that set up and making sure that those places are safe. So we know last night we had an estimated 48,000 people that spent the night in those shelters. And then today, early this morning, we got that call. I'm here in the Orlando office where the call came in to make certain that we had more evacuation centers available, and they began to process then additional volunteers and start putting them on buses and getting them to those locations while it was still safe to do so. So we're really, we're out there. We've got the place for people to go. One of the things that we want people to do is to download the Emergency Red Cross app. Now, this app has several things that will help people in this situation. First of all, there are alerts on there. You can set it up. We know I'm hearing it on mine, myself, the tornado alerts that are going off. So watching the weather, making sure that you know what's happening. But the other thing is that it does have an I'm Safe feature. And so we want to make sure that people stay connected with their families. You could preset the app with your text messages and with your message. Many times the communication might go down. You won't be able to make a phone call, but you can get a text message out. And this app will allow you to message several members of your family at one time. Let them know that you're safe. So that's very important to stay connected.
Are you seeing a lot of Floridians who decided to stay and they're now regretting the decision? Something that stood out to us, with so many seniors living in Florida, their family and friends had been trying to convince them all week long to evacuate, and some had finally decided today, and then they had a new set of concerns. They didn't have gas. They had shelters that they couldn't get into. Do you think there are many in that situation regretting that they stayed?
You know, I've not been able to see how, that number looks, but what I can tell you is that we do have a service that's called Safe and Well. We're encouraging people to register themselves as safe and well so that their family and friends may be able to find them through that program. You can do that by texting the word SAFE to the number 78876. And it will.
Miguel, with the rain coming down, we can't hear you. Can you please say that again? It's such an important number.
Absolutely. You can text the word SAFE to 78876, and it will walk you through the process of registering yourself so that after this storm passes, if your family cannot reach you, they can call 1-800-RED-CROSS, and we will be able to see if you have registered yourself in that system and where that place was that you last registered.
Talk to us about these shelters. I guess they're all very different, but what's provided, what's not provided? If somebody thinks they're heading to a shelter and they can gather up a few things, what should they be bringing?
So there is a difference here. We have evacuation centers that are intended to provide the immediate protection. Those are to save lives throughout this catastrophic storm. And evacuation centers will likely not have cots and blankets. So people have brought their blankets, their pillows, things to help them be comfortable. And then a shelter situation is a little bit different, where it's set up for a more longer term. Now, the evacuation centers, we have those, again, those trucks of supplies that we've been bringing in to ensure that if we should need to shelter people then in the long term, that we are able to do that at a moment's notice.
Miguel, the Red Cross, 365 days a year around the world, heroes. Right now, you've got a call out there for volunteer nurses. 2,500 have already stepped up. How can other volunteer medical professionals sign up and get involved?
Well, you can go to redcross.org/volunteer, and you can put your application in to sign up. You'll be contacted. We'll get you through the training that you need. Medical professionals, those folks, those are the people that are going to be into a specialized skill set. So we are really working to ensure that people who want to help are able to help, and we do appreciate that help.
How do people donate? If they want to use their phone right now, how can they text to the Red Cross and donate?
Text the word IRMA to the number 90999. That's a $10 donation. All of those dollars add up to help us provide this response. We're still responding in Harvey as well. So we have multiple responses happening right now, and the Red Cross is on the ground.
And the governor has specifically asked for nurses. They need trained nurses. That's an urgent need?
So we do work very closely with our partners, and the governor has been very explicit in making sure that people know how to help. There are some great pieces of information on that website for the government website for Florida, for the state of Florida. So I'd encourage people to check out those resources for signing up and getting directly connected with people that can put them right to work.
Miguel, we just want to say thanks. Miguel Holderby, we appreciate your time. And before we move on, I just want to repeat a few of these things that we told you. If you are someone in Florida and you
I'm going to ask our control room if they can also put this up at some point.
And if you are unsure if you'll be able to contact your family, you want to make sure they know you're safe, please text the number 78876 and type in the word SAFE. That American Red Cross will then put you through the system, and they'll be able to contact your family. If they then call 1-800-RED-CROSS, they'll find out if you're okay. If you want to volunteer, go to the Red Cross's website, redcross.org/volunteer. And if you want to donate, simply text 90999 IRMA. You'll give it a $10, I believe, donation. It was maybe $9 or $10. Either one, they need the help. All right, joining us now is WNBC reporter Adam Cooperstein. He is at Black Point Marina in Miami. Adam, give us an update.
Well, guys, over here, the rain's coming down, the wind has just picked up, and this is a street, although you wouldn't know it by foot. I can show you what is on this street, right? And a marina, So you can see it's about...
All right, as you can see, things are getting pretty bad in Miami. Adam Cooperstein there for us. This is now
These are images of Fort Myers, but if we can go back to that image we had of Adam just a moment ago. Adam, are you there?
I was shot cutting in. I'm still here.
Okay, so that's what happens in a hurricane, where those shots start to go down. So sometimes...
Ali, did you see... I mean, already it was just within 15 minutes ago, we were speaking to Maya and other people in Miami. There was nothing. It wasn't even raining. Now it appeared that he was in ankle-deep water.
So these come in bands. It doesn't mean that it gets worse from here. It could get better, and then it could get worse again. But if you look at the big picture of that storm, Miami is going to get massive amounts of wind and rain. We think we've reestablished with Adam Cooperstein again. Adam, you there? All right, there he is.
So, guys, in fact, here, look, this is a perfect example. If you can see this right now, take a look. There's a crab. It's a street, and there's a crab just kind of floating around.
Wow.
I don't know if you can catch that over there. And they've been all over the place. A bunch of crabs. I mean, the sea life, you know, just coming out from the bay under the streets. There's a huge one. Actually, follow me this way if you can. Eddie, we'll take him over here. Sorry, guys. It's obviously a tough condition right now after the early dance. But big crab. Just walking through the street in Miami. Look at that. Look at this thing. kind of crawling around, hanging out. And this is, you can see the white of the road. That's the middle of a street in Miami, about 20 to 30 miles south of downtown Miami. So we're out here, but you know, this is not something you're used to seeing. This is an area, though, they're always concerned about flooding, and especially now, storm surge an issue as well, because you're right here with Biscayne Bay, and then it goes feeding right into the Atlantic Ocean. So we've been monitoring the situation here, and then on the way here, of course, down trees because of some of the tornadoes that weren't expected to come through. A big surprise, some of the early bands of that hurricane bringing in tornadoes with it. So even though Miami, a bit of a sigh of relief for the residents here that we're not in the eye, not making landfall in South Florida, a lot of people very concerned tonight at those tornadoes, which you really don't see too often like this in hurricanes coming through. Back here, so this is the marina, and there's a ton of boats back there. And that's the other thing, that's the other issue. I'm actually watching my step here, not to
people kept their boats in the water?
Back there, they got a bunch of... So the boat, yeah, people left their boat. Actually, here, walk with me one more time if we can. And Eddie, we're going to take them through the water again, because I want you to see what people have to do in this area during hurricanes. Some of them still have a choice to have anywhere else to take their boats. And look, this is that road that's completely flooded. There's a crab right there, another one right there. Okay, and then here's the boat. Can you see that? Boat's kind of tied up to this little, whatever it is, this little guardrail, and back over there. Older boats, smaller boats. This one over here is called the hard money. It's going to be hard for that boat to survive, that's for sure, because this is just the beginning, and it's only going to get worse out here in this part of Miami. A very big concern for the owners of this stuff, but they knew it. They knew this coming in, and I think obviously they didn't have much of a choice. I worked in Miami for 12 years, and this is always an area, even during a Category 1 type of hurricane that comes through here, gets pretty beat up during the storm.
It is amazing to me. I realize it's hurricane season, but that's just like a 10-foot boat there with an outboard motor. And I guess so many people in Florida just think they've been through so much, let it ride. But my gosh, I mean, things are getting rough out there. Adam, it also sounds like the wind up. So it's gotten significantly louder in just the last few minutes. Is this the worst you've seen?
Actually, it's not. I didn't see a tornado, but when our meteorologist, the local Miami meteorologist, was talking about the tornadoes picking up and the really strong outer bands, we were measuring in Miami Beach gusts up to about 40 miles per hour. This feels a little bit weaker. Maybe it's 35. It's pretty close, though. And that really tells you, look, if we're talking about this kind of wind, you can see it's uncomfortable to be standing out here. Luckily, nobody else is. All the residents have either evacuated or they're inside hunkering down. That tells you what it would feel like if you're in the heart of the actual hurricane force winds. We're talking then about 150 miles per hour, which obviously isn't safe for anyone to be outside. This is not fun, and it's only about 40, 35 mile per hour gusts right now.
That's about where the emergency workers stop coming out, where the electrical workers can't do any more work. So whatever happens now, if power is lost, that's how it's going to be now for the rest of the night. Adam, thank you. Adam Cooperstein for us. We're going to stay going back and forth on that. I remember in Hurricane Gustav in 2008, I was on Grand Island, Louisiana, and we were with the fire chief. It was a Navy SEAL, and he had a big flashlight that he was shooting into the sky as I was doing my reports, and I kept asking him why, and he said to see if there's flying debris from a tornado. When you are in the midst of a hurricane, you have sometimes the atmospheric conditions for a tornado, and so what Adam was saying there is this could be damaging in a way that is very, very different. With a hurricane, you always know where the wind is coming from. So if you're on the right side of a properly built wall, you can be safe if you can avoid the storm surge and the flooding. But where it comes, let's take a look at some pictures of tornadoes. They are devastating.
The fact that here we go, we have some images right there. This is Fort Lauderdale. When you think about all of the people, these senior citizens who've said, I'm going to ride this out. I'm sort of at the twilight of my life. How hard can this get? Knowing that things like tornadoes could be ripping through. You know, I think about earlier in this broadcast, you and I spoke to Jose Lopez, a man who came to Florida specifically to help elderly neighbors of his who lived in the high-rise apartment building, in the same building where his parents had left him an apartment. His parents' best friends. In their 90s, I believe the husband has early onset dementia, and they're hunkered down. I mean, they've got food up to the ceiling in their I want to say their apartment building was 22 stories, but my gosh, the position these people are in, this is scary.
Right, and that's lucky. That picture we're looking at is a tornado you can see coming. You can actually see it right now at night. If a tornado is where Adam is, where we were just talking to him, you wouldn't know it's coming. And that's what the danger is in these things. The atmospheric conditions are ripe for tornadoes. A hurricane is a storm system that you can map. Tornadoes are not storm systems you can map. They happen because the environment is right for one. So this is another concern.
You know, when I was with Al Roker for the eclipse, I asked him the most extraordinary weather he's experienced, and he said, seeing the tail of a hurricane, tornado.
Yeah. All right, we're going to take a quick break, but our coverage, our live continuous coverage of